Everybody up there?
I also want to remind members of the audience and the group that we have 2 translators. If anyone would like to take part in that service and support. And we also have a suggestion box, question box, comment box for members of the audience to fill out a sheet if they have an idea, question, or comment, which we incorporate into the notes that everyone gets. And just to remind us of the big picture, so we still have the same challenge, which is we have to come up with a series of recommendations to forward to the Commission. Those recommendations are designed to guide the turnaround plan that the receiver and the Commissioner will develop. And, you know, in terms of raising the probability that these recommendations will be heard, listened to, and incorporated, you know, the degree to which they can marry into the 4 big categories from turnaround research, the better. And those categories, again, are what are we going to do to improve instruction? What are we going to do to improve specialized instruction, which means besides the general challenges of teaching children, we have kids with special needs, special profiles. How do we address their needs while addressing everyone else? Leadership is a 3rd category, and the 4th one is culture and climate. So we know from other turnaround schools and districts that when you pay attention to those 4 areas, good results happen for kids and the community as a whole. And we have work to do this meeting, but at some point we got to plan the next meeting, and there are 2 possible dates. Next Monday, which is the 14th, and the Monday after that, which is the 21st. And the question is, can we finish our work in 1 meeting? Do we need an additional meeting? And what's the focus of that meeting? So that's work that will emerge as we you know, keep focusing on this meeting. I drafted, as you can see, David and I tried to listen as carefully as we could to what you were talking about for the last few meetings, and to extract from your small group work and presentations things that sounded to us like emerging recommendations. So at some point we're going to look at that list. You'll have a chance to say, get rid of that one, change some wording on this one and it'll be all right, or really, you know, hold on to this one and add more. So please do not see this list as anything but an attempt to reflect what you've been talking about. And you need to be honest and say you did a crappy job, you know, because, you know, whatever we can adapt. And we're hoping that the discussion today will add to that list or change that list. And then people will have a chance to receive the next version of it and think about it and come back to the next meeting and do some even finer editing. So that's the work. I'd like to first start by checking in with you to see if there's anything that has occurred during the past week in your own thinking, in your own conversations, that you want to bring to the larger group before we dive into it. Yeah,
I was just walking in with a young lady who's attended most of the meetings as a parent, a citizen, I believe. And I don't know. She's concerned, as I'm concerned, that these meetings are not being posted on our cable access. Is that happening or is that not happening? Can somebody comment on that?
What's the question?
Are these meetings being posted on cable access?
Yes, they are. They're recorded by cable access and they're being posted on YouTube.
Have they been aired? Because I haven't been able to find them.
No, I'm not sure. That's a question for
That's something I know that we have a new personnel member down there, but that's on town manager.
Yeah, the answer is there's been some transition between the former person that was doing it, Mike McKinney, and the person who's doing it now, so he's been learning some of the things. It is, as you say, they've all been recorded, so they're going to both be going on to the cable access channel, and they will also be going onto the web as well.
They're on,
They're on.
yeah, they're on the Southbridge website. We have an LSG page, and then people have to click on that link.
Well, we have a segment of the community that doesn't have access to that. They do have access to cable. network.
Okay.
I'd like to see them.
The answer is it's going there. If it's not there already, he's working on it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Ashley, did you have a comment? I didn't know. if
It
you were
was,
just-
it was just a comment that the meetings, like, I think it's every meeting that we've had are all posted on the Southbridge YouTube
Right.
channel, so if you want to find it that way, it's available too.
Anything else? Yep.
I wanted to know how the community conversations were going. If it's still been good attendance and people been giving feedback, or they haven't viewed it, if they've viewed the meeting.
Yeah, so the first 2 meetings that were held last week, there were about 15 members who came to the morning session. And I believe my colleague said there were around 40 people who came to the evening session. And he said that they heard a lot of great feedback. We don't have a synopsis of it, but I believe some folks from this group may have attended. Yeah. So I don't know if Amelia, you want to say anything about sort of the feedback you were hearing, but my colleague Ventura Rodriguez, after he goes through the next 2 meetings this week, he's going to write up a sheet and we're going to have it before the last meeting.
A couple of things I can bring to you from this meeting in terms of parent recommendations. Parents ask why our curriculum is less rigorous than those of surrounding school districts. People in the group had children who went to Southbridge Public Schools for elementary school and then did school choice for high school, and they said that they felt their children were behind when they arrived at the other school districts. So improved rigor in the curriculum is something people have asked for. And another thing that I heard is that people want better communication with their children's teachers as far as homework and things like that.
With regards to the last part, the homework, you got anything?
Homework, for example.
Yeah,
People want to have better communication with their children's teachers about assignments and things of that nature.
Helpful. Anybody else? Yes, Ron?
So just something, I had an opportunity today to meet with Ventura and the current school superintendent, Tim Connors, based upon a discussion, frankly, we had about what I could bring to the meeting in terms of town-school relationships. My thought was to have the meeting with the superintendent because I think it's really going to be more of a direct kind of role between various managers. But one of the things that I talked about with them is sharing of staff or sharing of certain types of resources. I'll give you a couple of examples. One is that right now the school system has lost the superintendent's secretary, who happened to be the person, for the most part, in charge of HR matters. So they're sort of an HR person. We have a part-time HR person. Clearly, in my opinion, both the town and the school district is weak as it comes to HR services as a whole. So could there be a way for the town school system to work together to share HR services in the future? Same thing goes, we have a very long-term experienced town accountant. The school system has a relatively new business manager. Are there ways we could work together to strengthen the departments there as well? We do happen to share, or at least utilize the same town council. We use Miracle County, school system uses Miracle County. Could we, by working together and packaging that, could we save money on hourly wages of attorneys by working together? Another area of potential discussion was the issue of public works and janitorial services within the school. For instance, we have great plows, and we have a great plow team. We do marvelous work when it comes to plows, plowing roads and stuff. The schools need that during the winter. So if we could combine services there, that we could help the school system in that area. The school system has great people who do field work. Their fields are spectacular. Our towns are weak. Is there some way we can combine staff in such a way that it might improve our fields as a town-wide approach? And we have different janitorial services. Could we work together to do that? So I guess the general discussion at a very high level is how could the town and the school system work together to improve services and at the same time reduce costs? So I think we talked a lot about that and saying, well, a big part of that's going to be the new receiver to have those conversations because there's all kinds of issues. If you try to combine, for instance, public works and the school personnel, janitorial services. There's all kinds of union issues involved as well, but it's something we should explore as a way to both save money and improve services. So they suggested to me today that it should be something else that should come out of this group. That's one of the things that we should bring up to the new receiver when he comes in, that we should explore these opportunities and have those kind of meetings.
So this group can, you know, if they so choose, add a recommendation that says we think the receiver should explore, you know, sharing resources with the municipal side to improve services and keep costs at a minimum. You don't, again, you don't have to get into the details of spelling it out, but if you want to, as a recommendation, that's something you can do, so.
And frankly, we couldn't discuss details because we're not there yet. That would just generally open up the dialogue between myself and the new receiver to talk about those potential changes. And obviously, we wouldn't move forward unless it benefited both groups. So it's something I think is worthwhile to evaluate and to look at. You know, there's all kinds of concerns about power structures and who has control of who. But I've done it before in another town, so I know it works. So it's something that at least we should explore and look at. And then, you know, maybe we do HR, but we don't do the lawyers. Maybe we do DPW, but you know, we don't know. It could be any one of the four or none of the four, and maybe there's some others. So it's something that these should be explored.
Okay. All right, so if it's okay with you, then I'd like to sort of move into the work of this meeting. And
Can we just go over the materials that they have?
absolutely. So everyone should have the agenda.
Yeah, everyone got a staple packet. It has the agenda and the flow of the meeting, a reminder of what our norms are we agreed on. This is the feedback form from you guys. Then the emerging buckets document, as well as the emerging recommendations form that John and Dave created. And then you have more of the activity bucket sheets that we will use later on in the meeting. The two additional documents that you have, these were requests that we had from the last meeting. So you have a packet of the PD offerings that the district provides, as well as an organizational chart for the central office. And then folks wanted a sample of the types of jobs that were open and what those job descriptions look like. So these, you have a list of the current job openings, and then you have all of the jobs and their descriptions printed out, so you can see what that looks like. And we do have,
There's a request also for exit interview data.
I was told that the district does not have that. I was unable to get that, but I did ask. I'm not sure.
I would like to spend a couple of minutes on the feedback you presented to Dave and I in the form of this sheet. And I just want to take a minute, you know, clearly we need to spend more time and give you more time planning the next meeting. That stuck out to us, but I didn't know if there was anything else you wanted to comment on other than, you know, having read it, we're going to each meeting try to address the feedback to improve the next meeting.
Something.
Yeah.
In reference to the recommendation for recruitment and retention, there were some recommendations made that came right from the report. So when I looked under sort of the leadership and governance, there were some fine recommendations made there, one of which was to have school committee members participate in training for the creation of roles and responsibilities. The setting of the standards and practices for recruiting and evaluating of the superintendent was another one. The fact that, The school committee should establish a systematic, inclusive, and open search process to select a permanent superintendent. I would add systematic, inclusive, open, and national search to select for the permanent superintendent. Then it says here to consult with an experienced consulting firm specializing in that.
Alexis, can you just tell me where you're reading from? Because
I'm reading from the original district review, which I pulled out from the
That's fine, I
content
just
of the
thought you were
report.
reading from the document we had right up front, so.
That's the very first document that we were given to read. So when I went back into the tabs of the actual review, I found that there were several recommendations that were made there that I thought we should be going back to and revisiting because they were fine recommendations and making sure that, you know, that we're validating that those are good and that we think that that's something that that should happen. So I thought those were some good recommendations in regards to the recruitment retention piece, which fell into the leadership, stability, and appropriate roles bucket.
Right.
Am I tying the things together now?
Yeah.
Making sense? Making sense still?
Yeah, so I think in the list on emerging recommendations where there's some action steps, you would want to supplement those,
Right,
particularly in sync with that previous district review.
that's right, and the recommendations are,
And in particular, you're recommending that we put into those action steps under recruitment and retention that the school committee participate in a training that would help them evaluate the superintendent, which came right out of the district review,
right,
and also to develop an inclusive, open, and national is your addition search process for superintendent.
right.
Okay. Very helpful. And reminding us to potentially link back to that document is
That's
really
right.
helpful. Thank
There's
you.
a lot of good
Yeah.
recommendations in the documents.
Frankly, some of that probably can go into recommendation two, which is provide professional development for members of the school committee. That's probably where it belongs in recommendations, but define, those are things that the school committee needs to learn, right?
Right,
So that probably would strengthen recommendation two, and it's kind of part of one, too. It's kind of a combination of one and two.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. So we're kind of morphing right into the next step, which is fine. But I just want to check with the group if anyone has any comments about the feedback. And the answer is yes or no, you could decide. But also, we wanted to do exactly what Lillian just did. If you had any quick comments or reactions to either the bucket list or the emerging recommendations list, and Lillian just, and Ryan just gave us two really helpful.
In emerging potential recommendations, I'm not saying anything about the IT discussion we had the other day. We're talking about hiring executive, additional leaders in effective management tiers, and we talk about the ELL director and social services, chairs and everything else. But I don't see anything on the IT thing. It seems to me that there was significant discussion about the failure of having staff to educate teachers how to use the IT system.
I second.
What's that?
So I think what you're pointing out is we need a specific recommendation that's missing around strengthening the technology infrastructure, which includes not only the support around fixing hardware, but some of the ideas in terms of pumping out instructional support applications around technology.
Right, and there seems to be, I don't know the issue clearly, but somebody was talking about the fact that computers are being tied up for state tests and not being able to utilize it at the level. And for some reason, they sit vacant for long periods of time because of that state testing. I'm not sure what that means, but it was discussed.
So in order to do our MAP testing, so it's not a state test necessarily, it's the assessment system that we've moved to this year in the district. They have to take certain firewalls and protection off of these. So for that span of testing, while we're testing all the different grades, our carts are not available to the classrooms. And it's a process to take all that down and put it back on each computer. So that is something that's part of the challenge with our technology.
and the staffing issue that you brought up, there was a huge staffing, there was no IT director, there were people who cross over the schools, and then you don't have the proper service to be able to attend to your IT needs.
Duly noted. Yes. Yeah.
Since we're talking about number 3, I took issue with subgroup number 4, investigate whether SBS can expand the number of school resource officers. I think given the really intense staffing needs we have across the district, it's just not something that I personally would prioritize. I'd rather see more teachers in the building. And I don't know if this is something that we can talk about as a group, but I feel like, I don't know, as a public official as well as a parent, I want to do everything that I can to keep the kids out of the court system and into restorative justice programs. And so I really am leery of making a recommendation that we need more police in the school. And this is something that we're talking about.
So, I mean, if you go to the emerging recommendations document, number 3, and under number 3 in the second column, number 4, and it says investigate whether the Southbridge Public Schools can expand. It came up in a small discussion, that's why it's listed here, but Amelia's uncomfortable with it, and she explained that she'd rather put the emphasis on hiring additional teachers and focusing on more positive discipline approaches like restorative justice, rather than on additional members of the police department. Fair enough? Right?
I think there might be a little misconception too about the role of the school resource officer, because when I called him to my building, he's not necessarily coming as like an agent of the law. He's coming to have conversation, and we often utilize the school resource officer for conversations around bullying and mediation between students or between sets of parents. So it's not necessarily like maybe what people are thinking, the school resource officer comes in and arrests children that are misbehaving and carts them off to court. It's more surrounding the need for mediation and assistance with some more complicated things. Sometimes they are called as a mediator because we have parents on school property that are misbehaving and we need some assistance. And our first line, we're told to call the school resource officer. When that's happened in my building, he hasn't been available and I've had to call the station for support. So there are times during the school day or at the end of the day when we do need support. So I think that's where we were coming from the lower grades. When we call for the school resource officer, he's often not available because there's one for all buildings.
And I would think, and this could be something that falls into the recommendation, maybe the recommendation is more around finding the formula of whether it's school resource officer that's available, or wraparound coordinators, or school adjustment counselors. But all of those kind of, how I see, is they're all kind of playing each other's role, mainly because we're lacking wraparound coordinators.
Right.
So maybe the recommendation is more around finding the appropriate support staffing, that they find that versus we dictate what it looks like. So that at least there is somebody who can respond for the instances that you're pointing out. I mean, I'm wondering if that's more what we should recommend rather than articulating what formula it should be.
That's not very helpful because just by stepping back one kind of level, you don't get boxed into saying this is what we want, but people's needs are still being
Right.
addressed. So to focus more on the needs than the position that we're asking for. And I think that's particularly very helpful. John?
I also think what's missing here is we talked about having more social workers in the system and available to the system. And I think that if the social workers were more present, that maybe the school resource officers could step back, or maybe there would be less need for that. I don't know if we need to, altogether dismiss that, but I do think that if we had more social worker presence, that a lot of issues might be resolved.
Okay. And, just to point out, if you go to recommendation number 9, so that's also in the same area that we've been talking about. you know, we saw two themes, you know, and we can merge them later or parse them apart, but I just wanted to note that. Okay. Ashley has spent some time thinking about some recommendations, and I asked her if she could, as we talked about in our first meeting, to condense it into a one-sheeter, which she's going to pass out, and just give you a few minutes to digest it, and then we just want to add that to the thinking of the group. Actually, I'll help you pass it out so you can address me. So Ashley, you had mentioned that you had spent some time interviewing students and some faculty.
I did. So basically, I took a week and I kind of can show you guys my notes, but I went around the school and talked to faculty, including guidance department, a principal, my fellow students. I think I even addressed middle school students, and then the nurse department, a variety of different positions, just so that I could get as many different kind of point of views as I could. And I kind of based my 6 buckets from the last meeting off of what everyone was kind of saying they wanted to see in regards to changes. So the list that you have right now was kind of one that I put together and can kind of elaborate on once everybody kind of reads through it.
Actually, what I would propose is that we start with people asking questions for clarity's sake, because there may be things that they're reading that they want to have a better understanding of what you meant. So why don't we open it up to questions? I had one that I didn't mind starting on the back, right above number 6. You have in-class lending with better staffing, 225 high school seats lost in effort to alleviate struggling on middle school side.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's on the back side. I don't know what that means.
It's right at the top. Okay. All right. So in my meetings with guidance, there were a couple of different pieces of feedback that I felt were really important, and this is one of them. Basically, there was an issue with staffing on the middle school side, and I'm not sure if it happens with the elementary school side too. I assume that it does. But there were 9 periods that had to be taken from the high school and added to middle school scheduling because there was a lack of teachers. So there was a French class, a Spanish class, full year art, music, a second music class, 2 periods for computer applications, and 2 periods for physical education. So basically it kind of took choices away from high school and made classes in the high school larger than they should be because there was that gap in staffing due to lending. So 9 classes given up multiplied by 25 students per class is the number that you're seeing, the 225 total high school seats lost. And again, that leads into other problems that are addressed in that bullet point in general.
That's clear now. Now I understand what you're referencing. Thank you. How about other questions you want to raise?
Just on the opposite side of that, so in the middle school, even with the additional support of special ed teachers taking one class in their load, we still have classes of almost 40 in special areas for the middle school. So we also had a great language program that was starting in the middle school. As she stated, we have one Spanish class and one French class. For the last several years, or the last few years since we've been here, we were able to build that program up, so students would enter high school already having like a full Spanish one or a full French one, and even more so, and that has been almost eliminated from the middle school as well. So we are struggling in the area.
So both the point that Ashley raised and the one you supplemented is around short staffing, particularly in specialized areas, which then either really get very large class sizes or shrink the offerings that are available. And we're seeing that.
We're still struggling with having them.
Dave?
I have three, two of them are kind of connected. I like over in the handbook, visible concrete rules and regulations. Once again, our issue is not so much the rules, our issue is enforcement of rules and having rules that we are willing to actually hold the line on. From a teacher standpoint, we seem to be moving the line all the time depending on who, when, where, what. Study hall is a real issue because until we get the raise the bar academically, a lot of that would be wasted on kids who haven't been doing their classwork. Anyway, so I think that needs to be done. I think it's a good idea, but we need to raise expectation and holding kids accountable, for that to work. And I'll leave the other one alone. Yeah.
So just to clarify, you like the idea of focusing on a common handbook, but you see the issue much more on the implementation of a small set of rules, not just the distribution of the rules.
We have binders
Right.
and walls filled with rules that we don't, and policies and procedures that we don't, and job descriptions that we don't enforce.
And you're worried on the study hall side of thing that while there are some students who could benefit from that, you see it as a possible way of weakening rigor and high expectations, and that has to be something that you have to pay attention to first, is your point.
I wouldn't say weakening the rigor, I would say we would have to improve the rigor and improve accountability at the same time. So to make the study hall useful, because giving kids a study hall who aren't doing their work in class would just mean that gives them just more time to not do their work.
Ashley, how's that square with what your interviews brought to you?
From my interviews, study hall was basically one big thing that came from talking with students, especially the kids that are in my AP Lit class. So throughout our entire academic career here, there has been kind of a study hall or a similar study hall in the middle school side provided off and on, or something similar, I don't know. Yeah, like an advisory or whatever. But in the high school side, when people are beginning to have jobs and are taking AP classes and are involved in extracurriculars and extra things like that, there's never been an opportunity to provide study hall. So a lot of the kids had really expressed kind of a desire for something like that, just to make sure that they can get all of their work done and be able to catch up on what they need and really work on some skills that they had learned during the day or that they need to hone in on for a upcoming class. But that was more of a student suggestion.
Any other questions? No.
have a question about the moving of the sixth grade. We have to be careful that we're not just shifting issues and problems down so that they're just moved down to another building and it's still an issue. Currently, there are no spare classrooms, so that would require reorganization of all 3 elementary schools in order to accomplish that. So you just have to look really carefully at, but if we're recommending that, how that would like bump all the way down the line.
So, like I said, there was one thing I was going to stay away from, and unfortunately, we were
That was the one thing?
Well, yeah, that was the one I was staying away from. A few years ago, we had this conversation. If you look at our structure right now, you have Eastford Road has pre-K and K. And there was, at the time we started the conversation, an entire floor that was of classrooms that was empty. So the conversation was keep the K students there, and at the end of the year, move the first grade teachers down and make that a pre-K to 1. Keep the 5th graders at the 2 elementary schools, and then over the summer, move the 6th grade down, 6th grade teachers down. That would make this a 7 through 12 building, and it would free up, if we use that pod, if we use that one there, it would free up 9 rooms plus an office and a courtyard area and all that. And so we'd be able to either expand programming, in this building, or create an alternative program within our existing structure.
We also
So
have several teachers living off of carts going from room to room.
Right, and so just having the room, okay? So, I mean, we have one, I don't know what Eastford Road looks like now. I mean, and I heard that they use that floor.
They've expanded the preschool
What?
program.
2 classrooms are free.
So at the time, they've now filled that with what?
4 preschool classes, a discovery room, a pass from OT, PT, speech.
So, yeah, so
So just, because I'm not quite understanding, are you saying that existing high school, middle school doesn't have enough space for existing students? Is that what I'm hearing? So
Correct.
classes are
We were
moving around in the middle
over
school?
what we had. We were allowed to go to what we had, not for anticipated growth.
The
So
state,
enrollment is went up dramatically, is that what you're saying?
the state only allowed them to build for the current enrollment at the time of the project. And a lot of our kids had already left the district. So the current enrollment was depressed from what it had been, like I said, when my daughter was in the high school. So they built it for the existing, and now kids have started coming back, and we've had new kids moving into the district, so they were at capacity when they moved in.
So
Stop. I have to interrupt you.
Me?
Yes. That's just absolutely not true. Okay. There was a feasibility study when we constructed this school. The state has far better formulas than we can talk about. And they gave us the seat numbers that we were allowed to build for. It exceeded what we had. And I don't believe we're at capacity to date for this building, what it was built for.
There are teachers who have no rooms that move around the building, room to room to room. So
That
they,
may very well be.
I have to support Bill on some parts of this, is that I don't think we use our resources as wisely.
We
Our
built
space.
this school, and every one of the 8 classroom pods has a teacher breakout area where if their room wasn't to be used that period, if they had a prep period or another period, that other classes could go in and use that. And there was a work area in every one of these floors in every pod for teachers to go and work at. There's no centralized teachers' room in this building. I just wish, and I heard some comments last week about this, I take it personally because I was on the committee. I heard some comments last week about the technology that were absolutely inaccurate. And I bit my tongue. I'm not going to bite my tongue anymore. Okay, I just feel this building, 10 years went into the construction of this building. Not a dollar did it go towards increasing the tax rate here. And this is a building that, even the state's report, our problems in this district are not building related.
So just to further.
I apologize for
I'm
screaming.
saying that I don't know the building well enough to comment on that, but one of the things I was talking about today with our town accountants is I'd like to see the enrollment numbers. I'm curious about your statement, when we had that discussion today, I'd like to know if enrollment really went up, because we know that school choice, we get more and more kids being farmed out of the district into school choice, right? Family sizes, I don't know about this area, but family sizes for the most part have shrank, not increased. So I'm sort of curious to see what the enrollment is, because I'm not convinced that that's true, that enrollment went up. So I'd like to look at those numbers too, because I don't know why your sizes are, why your space is getting
I believe
narrowed.
it's students moving into the district, we have a lot of students that move here from Worcester. I do the placement in my building, so I know where my enrollment is, I don't know where
Yeah.
this building's enrollment is.
Again, what I wonder about is, we haven't increased housing stock in this town for a while, so I don't know where these kids would live, if that's the case. So I'd have to look at those numbers, because
I
I'm
can
curious.
tell you I have a lot of families that are doubled up. We have families that live with other families. We have a lot of homeless children.
Again, I just want to look at them. I'm not,
Maybe
I
that's
don't,
something they
So,
should.
just, I
you
just
know,
don't understand that, because it's an issue, it's a.
I want to go back to something that Kristen said earlier with regards to the resource office, because we're seeing it again here. We got to be careful, I think, that we don't recommend positions. By positions, I don't mean jobs. I mean that you take a position for a solution to a problem. Because we know that in some cases the information may not be accurate. In other cases, there may be other solutions to the need. The more we can focus on needs, then it's the job of the receiver and the commissioner to solve the need. So in this particular case, this is what I'm hearing. There's a need for expanded programming at the high school. There's this sort of thought that we don't have a room to grow. There's a need, I heard from David, for potentially creating an alternative program right here in the high school that could maybe be helpful. There's a need to make sure that teachers are not on carts, if at all possible. There's a need to continue to increase preschool support, because the earlier we start, the better. So if we focus on those needs, those are the needs we think that need to be solved. Now, why they haven't been solved is complicated. It could be because of some of the things we've discussed. It could be because of some of the issues with leadership that have been mentioned. Who knows? But we don't have to do the autopsy here to figure out exactly why this occurred and what the steps are. We just have to make sure that they focus on the needs. So I don't want us to get into a situation where some people have to be right and some people have to be wrong, because it's what are the needs. Keep on coming back to the needs. And what I'm hearing out of this is everybody practically is in agreement that we need expanded program for kids, particularly at the high school level. We need to get teachers, if possible, off the cards. We need to have our preschool program not necessarily shrink, but maybe even grow. And we may need to have an alternative program here for kids, you know, to better serve special needs. I don't know. But if you focus on that, then it's someone else's job to figure out how to make it work. Okay? Yes, Joan?
If I can change the subject for a minute. I was just looking at number 1, which is extracurricular involvement and partnerships. And I think it's great. I think the responses were great. I think the idea to have a community service requirement is a wonderful idea in this high school. And I think that would partner with getting more parent involvement, because when you get students out in the community working with other children and with families, you also get families participating in school more. So I think this is a wonderful recommendation, and I absolutely hope that we can promote that we have community service requirements in, I don't know, just middle school or the high school, but certainly that will promote a much needed give and take within the community and the school system. So I just think this is a great recommendation.
And that may be a good segue, because we want to do a deeper dive into improving parent and community engagement. So keep that in mind.
I would like to elaborate on that point, because it is one of my favorite points in this list. And it's one that I had kind of worked the hardest with. So for that point, it says that some schools choose to have a community service requirement, one of the teachers that I spoke with has a daughter that when she was in 9th grade, she was required to do 9 hours of community service, 10 hours, 11 hours. And I was wondering why our school couldn't do something similar. So a requirement to use the facility at least 1 day a week in a club or activity, maybe even similar to what BayPath does, where you kind of experiment in different shops to figure out what you like. And if it's not a club or activity, this requirement can really be helpful for people that are failing a class, because they can use that time to go to a mandatory tutoring session. Usually tutoring is kind of a volunteer effort, so a teacher can suggest it, but if you are failing a class, this can be an opportunity to send a student to go get the help that they need after school when time during the day is just too short. Lots of clubs and activities do have a certain standard that you need to uphold to remain in there, so it provides incentive. I know that there's always a kind of what do I get from this in any kind of situation like this where you're really trying to boost involvement. So involvement with programs such as the drama department, which has a standard that you have to meet in order to be in the shows, or involvement, I know there was a proposal for ROTC to have involvement with Southbridge, which could be a great thing. I know that it's kind of, you hear about it, but it's pretty weak in the district. I feel like that can benefit us pretty well if that gets off the ground. There will be a better involvement between school and student relationship, which I feel is kind of distant at this point. The only thing that I forgot to mention in this is my proposal that would kind of really bring all this in together and kind of really tie in parent involvement. In my observation of what college is set up like, there are often shuttles provided in which you can gain transportation from one end of the campus to another. The school is often said to be too far away to attend certain meetings or functions that happen after the school day, so not many people attend for those reasons or other reasons. But one of my proposals, and I'm not sure how flexible it can be, is some kind of almost a shuttle service to get people back and forth between community and the school here. It can really kind of get us that link to kind of build one constant channel. And I'd love feedback. Thanks.
Actually, if I understand what you just said, I think you have a powerful idea here where you're recommending that students, you bundle some options together. Anywhere from after-school tutoring, community service, clubs and activities, but it's for everybody, so raising the bar. And thereby making something that could be painful sometimes, the tutoring part of a package. And also paying attention to something that's blocked it in the past, which is transportation. And all of that, I think the part that I want to be clear about, and I think with all of us, is this is a really creative, powerful idea that came out of your interviews, but what's the problem you're trying to solve? What do you think what's the problem out there that if we do this, we'll get better?
Okay, so for this, I thought that it could really get a grasp on community involvement, which we've addressed multiple times, and also kind of provide, again, that incentive to get students to strive to be better than their former self. So really that's what this point is about. It's really strengthening that relationship and kind of fixing what we had kind of addressed multiple times. It's not just a break between parent and school system, but it's also student and school system, I feel sometimes, especially from some of my classmates that I observed, there's just like this disconnect. And I feel as though that can be bridged and extremely easily if there was just some avenue to create that. So I feel as though this might be our key.
I think that's is very helpful to me, that you see this as a means to strengthening the relationship between the school and the students. And you see that as powerful in a lot of different ways.
Can I add too, because I really think this is a valuable section on there. And in that, using this building, it's an incredible facility with, with arts and drama and tech eds, and we are not using that to the full capacity, and we should be using it more, and that would help. And again, if we want to talk about, the resource officer getting back, the police chief told me probably about a year ago now, that former police chief, that time, that 2:30 to 5 o'clock is hell for the police department. Too many kids that have nothing to do, and we have a beautiful facility that we could be tutoring programs. Thirdly, that adds to the other thing, which is set the bar higher so we can then have the tutoring for those kids instead of lowering.
Yeah.
I just have a simple question about number 4, the post-secondary planning. You sent in your last check, supplies to assist with college. What do you mean by supplies?
Okay, so this is, again, another recommendation that kind of stemmed in my interviews with guidance. There was a grant that was applied for that would put someone in the building 4 days a week if we received the grant. Someone would be here 4 days a week working on college planning. And that's basic, it would help, but it's not enough. So creating a college hub, which would be, of course, would need support with more technology, and the supplies that you're referencing would basically be anything that is required, running from things that are needed to build a resume to just kind of like building a portfolio of, let's say, artwork if you're in digital tech, or graphic design. There would need to be kind of supplies based on, I believe the vision that I heard was 4 sets of tables, enough computers to support everyone that's working with Naviance, College Board, and other college planning software, because they will be working with Naviance starting next year for the upcoming seniors or juniors now.
Can I just ask one question? So what is that room being utilized for right now? I thought that was the
It's
college career.
It's a
center.
conference room right now. It's kind of used for lunch occasionally. And the computers that are in there are slightly dated. And there's only 3 or 4. And with the amount of kids that are trying to figure out what to do, I did address it, I believe, that there is a large kind of sense of anxiety surrounding college planning. And with the kids that need support, especially when the classes are getting bigger, you can kind of observe it as time goes on. There needs to be more than just those 4 computers on the desk against the wall.
For instance, there was no SAT prep at all. The kids have to go onto College Board on the computer and figure it all out themselves. They need more guidance, basically, and it's not the fault of the staff. It's just, again, understaffed, and there's just too many things that need to be done for the other kids, and the ones who need to go to college or looking into colleges don't get the support they need.
So, having run college access programs for a bunch of years, including here in Southbridge, until the U.S. Department of Education didn't refund us 4 years ago. One of the things that I think is needed, and I know, for instance, UInc does have on their radar, this is a funding cycle coming up for 5 years. We will be reapplying for Southbridge for a 5-year funding cycle starting for FY 2018, we'll be applying this coming fall for that. It's a whole year lag that happens with that. But it's important if we're making recommendations, that the recommendations are based on 4-year college planning, not just what we're doing in our junior year, not just a place for, whether it be computers or materials or things of that sort, but more how it's embedded in the curriculum. So how is the pathway in college planning embedded in the entire curriculum starting at freshman year, at the very least, if not middle school. So just want to add that, I think this is all really good stuff, and I'm excited that there was a grant that was written. I do think that this is another place to make a recommendation to access outside resources, so not just UInc, but Quinn Sigeman, for instance, Workforce Central for career pathways, Mass EdCo, I know, does a lot with Southbridge students as well, MIFA. There's a lot of organizations out there that we should be tapping into to work with. So a recommendation could be to work with those outside organizations because of the lack of resources, to have them come within. But I just want to be really careful that as we frame recommendations that we're thinking, not just, again, place, facility, but more around curriculum building, pathwaying for entire, and so this again goes to rigorous curriculum, so that fits. It's all kind of like a Jenga puzzle, they all fit together. So, in the same thing, you could even link that all the way to community service and the importance of community service to career tracking and career pathways. So, just as we think about recommendations, we should think about it as curriculum based.
I agree, and that's one of the issues now, is that the kids are given the choices to plan their high school careers, but they're not given guidance to go with it, so they don't know what classes they need, some of the kids don't know what they want to do, some of them do, but they still don't know what classes they need. How do you plan your high school career with no guidance? It's not possible. And then you get to, junior year, you need to start looking at colleges, senior year, you start applying to places and you don't have a clue. It's frustrating. These are...
And there are models that are not solely, and so we're not, again, it's not for us to come up with a solution. And I know I keep saying that, but there are models that do just what you're saying. There are some neighboring school districts that have an advising model. So you have a homeroom teacher that you only meet with once a week. It only fits in your schedule once every 6 days or whatever. And that is to look at how you're doing academically, help to build your career path throughout, and so that gets built in an advising model. So it's not just guidance, but it is a staff person that's a teaching staff that's part of that. So there are a number of other options, and it ends up being, an hour-long period, but you have to build in study halls and other things in the curriculum. So again, it goes back to curriculum design and curriculum base. I think when you look at the report from the review, it clearly says that rigorous curriculum needs to be looked at, and that the curriculum needs to be looked at in full design, that's one of the things that was recommended.
Right. And I think this last part of the discussion has been very tight in the sense that it's part of a bigger picture of raising the bar, and it's not just a Band-Aid improvement, but really going deep, because if we want kids to be prepared for what happens after high school, it's not something that just occurs senior year. And embedding it into all the pieces to have, part of the wraparound services support this, but also to have kids be thinking about this early on so that they can be taking the courses that they need, rather than finding out late in the game that they're missing some pieces which, had we intervened earlier, could have been helpful.
I'm also feeling a sense of urgency of not just that longer planning for the schools, but what's happening with the juniors and the seniors. And I think that the community partners can have a role to play. Kids Who See can have a role to play with some dual enrollment, some concurrent enrollment pieces. We run what we call Math 4, which is a non-credit where we help them to build up their math skills so they can get into a college-level math course. That's something we can offer for free as well. So there's a lot of partnerships and opportunities given the opportunity to come in and support the students, so that those that are the younger ones can get an opportunity to benefit from this. But the ones that are now ready to move, what's going to happen to them? And so action needs to happen quickly for them. This is an immediate need.
So I'm going to use that to push us, because of time, into a deeper dive that I think will allow us to continue the conversation about parent engagement, community resources, wraparound services, because it keeps on coming up, and I think we got to do a deep dive. I want to thank Ashley for putting in a heck of a lot of time, and I think there's more that we can squeeze out of it, but given what's on our plate, if it's okay, what I'd like to do is break this up as we did last time, except it's a different set of trios, and spend some time on community and family engagement. And the focus of this, again, if we go to the sheet inside the packet, that looks like it has 3 columns.
Inside your packet with the agenda.
Like the last page is fine. So the first column is about adding services, adding supports that is not happening. The second column is, we got some good stuff happening, let's not lose it. And the third column is, we may need to stop some stuff. All right? And I would like you to look at your name tag. Look at the green numbers, okay? Because the black numbers were last week, so you have to find the green number. One group is going to be down one person because Pat is coming a little late. It should be arriving soon. So if we could start with the ones over here, 2s, 3s, kind of where Ron and Dave are now, 4, 5, and 6. All right, look at the green numbers, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Use the 1. Use the 1. Use the 1. You can just stay right there. You a 1? No. Well, so that is kind of an Indian religion too. What?
Anybody else?
I call it heel or whatever. So Indian.
Maybe wear the short dress.
No, it should be, 1 should be incorporated.
It's nice if you can say like, you gotta stay inside there.
2.
The north is like we all.
Where's 3?
Okay, just to remind us what we're focusing on, you're looking at
You're somewhere over there.
what does the system need to do to improve 2 potent things, parent engagement and community engagement. We want to strengthen those 2 areas, so you're going to be walking through what do we need, what do we have going for us right now, what do we want to have stopped. All right, so it's parent and community engagement being strengthened. What can we do? What are the ideas? And I'm going to accelerate this a little bit, so let's spend a good 12 minutes on this. That's not a lot of time, and then I'll check in with you to see if we're ready to report out, so we can stay closer to the schedule. The today's meeting is in at 6:30. That's it.
So you're the expert in this area, aren't you?
One thing
I don't think we can follow.
I still think the carrying about this kid can go a long way. Even if it involves anyway, maybe that's what homework or reading the kids. That connection at first can go a long way.
Right. So how do your mitigation?
What's happening now? Parents. Yeah, the problem is that the person most likely is the parent who cares if son is doing it. How do you get the parent that is not doing it? Part of the reason why the parent It's kind of like, okay, here's my kid, do what you can to fix it, to help the homework, and about school. So many. Even that's not gonna sell light. Do you want to make sure it's I know our school one time, you can come in for a parent, for a concert. That security issue is a big barrier. Sounds like we,
That was a priority. We had Southbridge.
so you can contact you.
I got an email.
So if I have any questions, you can reach out to me just through the email.
We're gonna throw in So once you get that access, you can edit it. Yeah. So when you really want to, you know, run it.
Authority given. Yeah, we have authority, so it's probably really what it is, when you set the, I think people are the only ones that set up the page.
Like you said, it's just an access issue. You have access. It's like,
Social media is the worst communication in terms of business. We do have trying to get all of my friends. Nothing entirely true using real communication. Thank you. I said like a little bit more before. Social media is and I know you can make it really tough. Yeah, but it's certainly
2-minute warning, 2 minutes.
they don't come to their parents, they bring a report card to
They used to mail when I was a kid. They never gave me, if I would have been there, I would have. That should be mailed directly. The email I mailed directly to the parents, they can't cook it.
And that way you don't.
1 minute, 1 minute.
Well, it's just stunning to me, they would never dream of doing that. Because they know none of us would have ever brought it to our parents. That's the parent asked you, then you should have. Oh yeah, I forgot to give it to you, Mom. That's it, yeah, you know, the parents do that, the parents don't. Parents are disconnected. You can't make them, I mean, that's a separate. You didn't make a bad parent. At least you send them to get detail.
Like I said,
Okay, if I could have your attention. I realize it's not an ideal amount of time, but I'd like to dip into your thinking today.
We can talk about this.
You know,
I think I know this one because
so please, when you give your report of what you discussed, try to be crisp and try to stick to the fact that, look, what's the big idea that you're recommending, maybe more than one? What do you want to see supported because it's really a great example of something? And what needs to be stopped if you came up with that? Sometimes we don't have so many things on that end, but I want us to get to that. So who would like to start us off?
We'll go first.
All right, number one goes first. Go.
Well, I mean, we could have used a lot more time,
I
but,
know.
you know, what's not needed in this area, what's needed and what is not happening. Improve staff diversity. Hire more bilingual teacher assistants. If we can't hire teachers, maybe teacher assistants in the classroom. Make the parent-teacher meetings more enticing. Make it a pizza event or et cetera. Whatever your idea is. But more important, it seemed to be in communication issue across the board. Between parents and teachers, you know, I guess the email address system is not being kept up, so that needs to be looked at regularly and kept updated.
Does that mean the website, like,
You mean parent email or teacher staff?
Okay, well, it's just what, there's a lot, almost everybody when I talk to the staff says there's a disconnect, the parent-teacher thing, there's a huge communication on that. And so, like our current system, phone numbers are often wrong, email just are wrong. We can't access, we can't email a whole class, like if you had a class assignment, which would deal with some of the other issues of increasing rigor. What's that? Oh, email the whole class. You can't do it through the iPass, just kind of like take your class and send an email. You have to cut and paste all the email addresses. You know, iPass can do it, but we're not using it. Some other schools have, you know, parents can look at the kids' grades online. We're not able to. We don't do that in this district. So there's just a huge disconnect between, you know, parents and teacher. And I wouldn't say it's all the teacher's fault. We tend to see the parents of the students like Ashley and Rebecca. You know, we see them where there's other students who are not doing so well, and we need to see those parents, and we need to figure out how we do that. So we just need a much better communication system. I'm sorry, I didn't want to.
We talked about also transportation. That might change things. What is happening now needs to be supported and continued. I guess there's a robocall sort of system in place for some things that should be continued, looked at in ways to, you know, even use it more. Continue with the activities that they have that showcase students, like art shows, science fairs, those kinds of things, and also get parents more involved in these events.
what needs to be stopped, we can get there.
Okay.
Although, you said, couldn't think of anything.
It could be.
I mean, there's actually a number of powerful ideas, improving staff diversity, possibly more teaching assistants who are bilingual. I think this notion of making parent meetings more enticing, and you specifically mentioned connecting a social aspect to the content as a means of encouragement, transportation as a support, improving the technology infrastructure as a support. So there's a lot of pieces there, and as well as the things that are already happening that give us an insight, like activities that showcase kid work.
Yeah, I just want to add one more, coming from where I am, more collaboration with local agencies that are willing to help. Some schools we hear from all the time. Since I've been there, I can't tell you the last time I heard anybody from in the Southbridge School District call upon us for any help with anything.
How would teachers find out about what agencies want to help?
Crickets.
I think because there's no centralized, mechanism.
We talked about that last week about doing some resource mapping, and that perhaps the entity could do, a recommendation could be to do some resource mapping and share that with the district around some of what are the key experts in the community that could be tapped into for various.
So that's a need, because the crickets tell us that we need the map.
Wouldn't that go through guidance?
Not always, because it could be something that's not connected to a guidance type thing. So I'm trying to come up with, it could be pediatrician related, it could be, there could be other needs that are out there. Yeah, education. Transportation, right.
Translation.
Translation, yes, it could be a number of things.
Okay.
A recommendation that came up in my building was to have a spot, like a tab on the website that listed for teachers and for parents, that all the different services, the phone numbers, and the include a contact for what.
I think too I think that's a great idea, and then I think another thing that could tap into that once they've done that resource mapping is have that be even part of professional development. Like, I think that's a great professional development opportunity for staff, for teachers and staff around what's out there. I mean, and what's available once that legwork has been done.
Absolutely. Do you guys want to just transition?
Sure. So we too talked about transportation. But one of the things that came up with this, and Bill, you could feel free to chime in at any time, but we also talked about that's not always, I think we're quick sometimes to say transportation is an issue because of the location of the building, but when we had a program that was up at Nichols College in the summer, for 4 summers, we had 50 students that were up there and that stayed there overnight on weekends. And when we had our banquet every year, we would have as many as 200 parents and family members that would be there to celebrate with those 50 students and participated and who got there. And they got to Nichols on their own. So Nichols is a lot further than this, and they still found transportation and ways to get there. And so one of the things we talked about is how did that happen? What was the magic behind that? And the same thing with things like when we need something for a band banquet and parents come and they participate. And some of it is, we asked, as does band, we asked, bring something. We need something from you. We prescribed what your participatory role or parent participatory role would be. So for us, our banquet was completely catered by the parents. They all brought it, they all catered it and brought food, and we asked that of them. We prescribed what our needs were as a community and asked parents to participate in a very prescribed way. And we had a great response on that. And so I don't think all the time it's necessarily prescribed at the middle and high school level. I think we do that sometimes, like, we want you to bring in or do something at an elementary level. We want you to participate in something that's happening in the classroom more in the elementary level. We tend to ask for things. We don't always ask parents to prescribe things at a middle school and high school level. And so we thought that may be a recommendation, to think of ways to celebrate success, think of ways to ask parents to participate that are where they have a role in the participation and they are part of it in order to engage and be part of. With that comes communication. So in order for that to happen, there has to be really clear communication channels in which that happens on a regular basis, and that communication should be ongoing. And we also kind of link that up as well as communication with community providers too. Tell them what we need. That I think there's a lot of community service folks as Workforce Central would come and help and probably do workshops and do things at the school if they knew what it was that the school district needed. And so asking for help, saying these are our needs and we need you to come in and provide help to us, I think would provide more support and engagement. And then I think the last thing, that if I'm missing something, let me know. One of the other things we talked about is, we talk about community engagement as far as getting people to the schools, but you could have community engagement by going to the community. So you could have high school and middle school activities, at the football field. You could have it at the town common. You could have functions, activities, events that are middle school, high school focused that don't have to happen in this building. They can be both student and parent participatory in the community. So that came up as well.
Really, some powerful ideas, and I think, this notion of looking at something that worked and try to take it apart so that we could see the seeds that maybe can be borrowed for something else is just really an awesome idea. So thank you.
And looking at things that we talked about as programs that both public school and the community need to communicate together. The different programs that we have. And we talked about how children start off in Head Start, and they start off in some early preschool. And parents are very involved. And we were talking about how Head Start required that parents come in. They invited parents elected each other to different councils, and they were involved in things like curriculum, things that were decision-making things, not just there to offer various opinions, but to really be involved in decision-making. We talked about parents meeting and doing that. But we also talked about once a parent is leaving Head Start, well, where do they go next? And we talked about how maybe agencies need to talk to each other. And we talked about how there are some memorandum of understandings between community organizations. But maybe if they talk to each other starting at Head Start and say, okay, now you're moving up. Here's how you can get involved and continue to be involved as you move up. So you create kind of a pathway for parents to be involved if they so choose. Between the agencies, between the school systems, between all the resources in the community that really affect children's lives. We talked about home visits being an integral part of a preschool experience, and even in our preschool as well. But that ends in very early childhood for the most part, and perhaps that would be something that we should think about continuing.
We also talked about the parent volunteers when they come in, and maybe there needs to be, and maybe there was at one time a handbook for those volunteers, a little bit of training for them, some do's and don'ts, because one thing that happens as children move up, the teachers become more and more hesitant to have the parents in their classroom, and we need to kind of tease out why that is. One possible reason is I did talk to parents and administrators this past week, teachers and administrators this past week. One possible sort of roadblock to having parents in is this whole social media, because they hear parents go into the classroom and then something happened, and next thing you know, it's on Facebook, and then the teachers are like, whoa, don't want that in my room, and they're sort of hesitant to have parents, and I did hear that from more than one teacher, that they're afraid. It's not necessarily their experience, but they're afraid of that experience. Then we talked about maybe there's, going along with that handbook, maybe there should be a contract when you come in and volunteer in the schools. some way of knowing, like, this is what we do, this is what we don't do. And then Evelyn also talked about moving from sort of parent involvement to actual parent engagement, and that was really the takeaway I got from it, is that her parents have decision-making capacity on that parent advisory board. They participate in hiring and decision-making, curriculum, budget, so their parents really feel like part of Head Start, where our parents maybe don't feel like they have that. And then you did mention vocational opportunities too.
One of the things that we do in Head Start is that we create a parent handbook, and there it is like job descriptions in different areas where the parents can participate. At the beginning of the year, we have orientation with parents, and we tell them how they can participate, where they can participate. At the same time, we do a survey, and we have job description. So if they would like to volunteer in the health department, we have a job description, and we train them. With that comes, we have to do survey inquiries, so that is not that everybody can go and just volunteer. We have to follow all the regulation that by the EEC. And then another thing is we talk to the parent at the beginning of the year and express to them how important it is for us that they participate, that they feel welcome, and it is okay to come any day and any time.
I just want to let you know, I have to leave the town council meetings tonight, so I apologize, but I've got to depart.
And then we were talking about that, I don't know, in the high school, because everybody's talking about academic, but I would like to know, if you're interested, if you have something more than just academic, because not everybody goes to college, and some students really like the hands-on, like computers and good.
Thank you very much, and I think that distinction between parent involvement versus parent engagement is very powerful. And I think also what's unfolding here is that with orientation, with support, with handbooks, with being clear about expectations and also guidance, that you can avoid some of the problems that people worry about, and also help parents understand sort of how things can work effectively, and moving away from just services that parents can donate, but also how can they get engaged in decision-making, recommendations, and other kinds of things.
But some parents can feel comfortable in decision-making, but sometimes they feel just be in a library, like handing books to other parents.
They give a range of possibilities. Thank you.
So we talked about many of the same things, but on the flip with the social media, we were talking about engaging social media and using Facebook and Twitter as a way to communicate with parents. We also talked about training or PD for teachers on parent engagement. I think it's sort of a complicated topic, and there's certainly more research in that area that we could probably share with our staff and our administrators. We also talked about getting the students involved, so if the kids want to go to an event, usually they can badger their parents into bringing them. So we thought that was a good motivator. And we had a great idea from Eastford Grove School. If we had parents who didn't speak English, they could be invited into the classroom where their student was and sort of pick up some of the language and be able to go home and talk to their student about maybe what happened in class that day and things like that. So a way to incorporate and kind of make parents feel comfortable in this classroom and the school.
And another thought was how to use the community-based organizations to bring in ideas that could be helpful to parents. I think helping if parents need learning language, if they need training, if they need a job, how do you hook them by bringing in a resource and an opportunity for them to learn about something that they need personally, because as they're improving their lives, they can then be better supporters of their children. So sourcing out what are the kinds of programs and opportunities in the school that parents want to come to, so that they can take advantage of that to improve their lives, and in the process of improving their lives, they're going to be more supportive of their child, because now they're sort of, improving their overall family.
This seems to be a powerful theme, which is you know, Southbridge needs more resources, but also there seems to be some resources that we haven't tapped into and squeezed out enough. And not, and how to activate those resources and really, you know, learn how to use them effectively seems to be a powerful theme that keeps on coming up through the recommendations.
I think that Southbridge, even though that is a small town, have a lot of resources, but I don't think that many people know what are the resources. And one of the things that we do is we bring people, speakers, to talk to the parents about substance abuse, domestic abuse, resources and system that they can really apply during the winter time. So bring the resources to them so they know how to access the resources when they need them. But we are not there for them all the time, so they need to really navigate the system.
I just had a question for Heather. What's the Parent Advisory Council's participation for special ed purposes?
Well, it's been up this year. We probably have a consistent 8 parents that come. We have partnered with Head Start though, and generally we get a larger turnout. But again, it depends on the topic of the month. Yeah.
So there may be some things there that we could borrow and generalize.
Absolutely.
Like in this population too.
Great. What do you guys?
Yeah, much of the same, just to add to it, we had a discussion about how teachers are going out on their own to find different resources to communicate, like we were talking about the homework, like parents wanting to know what homework the students have and that kind of thing. Some teachers are using things like remind.com, Remind 101. But then when you get into people using all different kinds of things and the parents are having to go to multiple different places. So kind of working with the teachers to choose maybe the best format and what they would like and what's easiest for them, and let them pilot some things and try that, and then come to something. Because everyone has the ability right now in the school and in the district to have a classroom webpage, but not everyone utilizes that, and that would be a place that you could share that information. But if it's, we haven't had someone to do the trainings on those web pages and how to fully access everything and how to easily set it up, and so there are some things available that, like you said, are just not being utilized or untapped because we don't have the training. We need better use of social media we talked about. Wanting some kind of bus loop if we could. Being more welcoming with the facilities here. So we have beautiful facilities that are empty a lot of the time. Some of that's due to cost and people are going elsewhere. So really taking a look at that and definitely having more opportunities for students here and families in the evenings. We talked, so for example, as far as when you're in 9th grade, what paths to take and what classes to take. So the guidance department does next for those. They set up and they invite the families in to come in and they present all of these things. And last year doing it here, they had about 9 families show up from the freshman class. And then doing it this year down at Colab, I think they had close to 60 something. I believe that's what Melissa said. So
Is that new within the past couple of years?
I know it's new here, but they may have done it previously when they were down at the other high schools. So they're doing that. It should probably be opened up to families of students, all of the grade levels that they can address that. We had school council, so that is a place for, we had that this week, or last week. And that is a place where parents can have a little bit of a voice in budget and school uniform policy and all those different things. We bring those topics up. And I actually shared our emerging buckets with them, and we had conversations about it, and a lot of our emerging buckets kind of fit into the same buckets. But their big piece is, just so I don't forget and want to share their voice too, really the need in regards to behavior and alternative schools. But a lot of schools have like a marquee that has events that are upcoming and all of that stuff, and because we're out here, people don't see that. So we were talking about maybe a central location downtown with something that had messages. The police have their signs up that about voting and things like that, that we could maybe have something downtown, because there's people always going through the center of town to get information. that way, just another thought. And they had many concerns about family engagement, but we didn't get into depth about ideas, so.
I'd just like to talk with, well, what Kristen said. I think for parents' involvement, if you give them a specific task, like you said, they will come through. We have a band parents organization here, with 70 kids in the program. We have pretty much 40 parents at every meeting every month, but they have a specific activity to do. As far as freshmen, within the first week or two of school, we would have all freshman parents come into lunch with the students. We would have a luncheon for parents and students, introduce the parents to all the staffing, all the textbooks that they should expect to be seen home on a nightly basis. So it was, again, food-oriented, but we would get a lot of involvement. We'd also bring external groups in. We would have the Women's Club, the Lions Club, the Rotary come in into school, give them a tour, have lunch. Again, we would try to build a new school at the time. So, I mean, just some ideas. My biggest concern is, again, we lock the doors at 3:30 and we just push everyone out.
Okay, and last group?
Do you want to?
Sure. So what needs to happen that is not happening, I don't know if, you know, as the union rep, if a lot of the teachers I represent would be happy hearing this, but I think, parents should have access. I mean, if we have to do lesson plans digitally, I don't see why it's, you know, what's the problem with giving access to the lesson plans that are already there anyway? I can hear Dave grunting over there.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you.
Also, kind of to dovetail, giving access to grades, access to behavior referrals, that way you don't get the, parent coming in June saying, why is my kid gonna fail this quarter? How come my kid's gonna have to go to summer school when you sent out 4 progress reports, 4 report cards, try calling home? You know, I mean, there's gonna be, ultimately there's gonna be parents that, as much as you wanna reach them, and it's not gonna happen, but we need to make sure that we make every avenue of approach accessible so that excuse isn't really viable. You know, for example, sending report cards home via mail or email instead of sending them home with parents, with the students. When Ron was here, he said that, you know, if I was a kid, I wouldn't bring my report card home, and I'm sure that's what's happening a lot of times. I mean, regardless, come December, if you haven't seen a progress report or report card, you should probably raise a red flag, but that's neither here nor there. I think that our administrative assistant has a lot on her plate to begin with, probably way too much on her plate, but I think anytime a parent or guardian comes to the front desk to pick up a kid, you know, a meeting, whatever, I think their contact info should be updated. We got a lot of low socioeconomic status, people that fall within that, you know, that box. And, you know, a lot of times they got the drop phones that they're got a new number every 2 months. So, I mean, not only should we be getting their info constantly anytime they come in, but also offering, you know, here's your teacher, you know, your kid's in what grade? Okay, here's your teacher's information, here's this person, if you need to get in touch with them. That way we just, you know, we won't have those excuses. I think another thing too, we need to define like the roles of who calls when. You know, if a kid gets sent to ISS, if a kid's failing a course, if a kid gets sent out of class, who's responsible for calling. I don't put much stock into the calls that I have had that parents have said, oh, my kid's been sent to ISS 5 times and I don't know. I find that hard to believe. Then I'm the first one letting them know, but...
What does that acronym mean?
Sorry, in school suspension.
Okay.
What's happening that needs to be supported? All calls were happening. I heard a lot of positive feedback from parents. And then I guess, I don't know if it was the last superintendent wanted to, scale those back, and now we don't have them weekly, which a lot of parents love. So, I mean, we still get them occasionally. I don't know what's going on there, but I think the websites that we had, the teachers have, should be mandated, but also in our defense, we had a lot of new teachers this year that didn't have access to that. We had teachers listed that hadn't been working here for a year and a half, 2 years. In the meantime, there was people that wanted websites, that wanted to post things. Amelia mentioned parent volunteering at the lower levels, and we were curious as to whether or not that could happen at higher levels, and if it could, how to make that happen.
Like, what would it look like? What would parents be doing at an upper level volunteering position as opposed to like what they do at the lower levels?
And, yeah, I think that's pretty much all I got.
No, it's just perfect.
Some major themes here that keep on reoccurring, and the interconnectedness, how technology and leadership and professional development and connection with external resources are all interconnected with this domain. But this notion of improved communication, relationship building, doing things that connect you human being to human being, so that there is that sort of sense that we're connected, as well as the communication that's needed, also themes that keep on emerging. A lot of rich ideas here that will either add recommendations or better shape recommendations. What I'd like to do is to take a 9-minute break so we can stay on schedule, stretch your legs, talk to people in the audience, ruminate. When we come back at 6, we have to talk about how we're going to sort of plan ahead. So we may have to postpone some of these things or talk about other ways of addressing them, because we've got to get that planning in, okay? So I'll see you back at 6.
Sorry, I don't want to talk about it all. There's a lot of things.
All right. Rebecca, you asked that you could make a comment to the group.
That's all right.
You want to pass? Okay.
Well, now you got it,
No, it's just in regards to, I think it goes back to technology and the communication piece, and, like our system currently doesn't allow us to document anywhere that we called this parent today, or we had contact. So there could be these ongoing dialogues happening, and we're not aware of them, other than like teachers keep a parent phone log for the most part, just a handwritten thing. As does administration, we have nowhere to document, I guess, this kind of thing. And I think it's important, so we know, I can call a parent and someone's already called, and I guess over communication is a good thing. But that's just something to look at, is our system in general. I think we use iPass, and it does not interface with a lot of different valuable tools we could be using, and it's not really, I think we need to shop for a more one-stop kind of program where we can track our discipline, we can share grades, we can email parents from it, we can do all of that kind of in one system to streamline it for teachers, because it is a cumbersome thing to have to stop and enter note, but if you know that it's helping in the long run, the overall communication and all that, it will be easier.
I mentioned to Rebecca that we can add that as part of the technology recommendation, that we need an improved management system, including support for teachers and technology to make sure it's working. But, that's up to the group again. So,
John, I was under the impression that had already been undertaken. That iPass was on the way out, and that they had a committee and had looked at 4 or 5 vendors for the student information services. Anybody know anything about that?
I think with the rotating roles at central office that,
might have been dropped.
I think they hope to. I think they understand that this isn't the best system for us to be using. But we also talked about the fact that if we're asking teachers to utilize all of these other new things, that could bring in yet another new system and train the staff on a new system that was an additional piece for professional development and all that stuff, so I think those conversations were.
Thanks, Rick. So, if it, unless it's critical.
This is really quick.
Go ahead.
I just think that teachers would be more likely to embrace a new system if they were part of choosing that system. That's all.
And I don't know if it was Laurie that mentioned, if we implement something, we have the materials, we make sure we give enough time, you know, and that piece of it too. So here's the challenge. We either have 1 or 2 more meetings. If we have 2, there's a meeting next Monday and the Monday after. If we have 1, we get to pick which Monday. And, you know, clearly the agenda, if we have 2 meetings, needs to be talked about. And from my vantage point as an outside pair of eyes, having done several rounds of these in Holyoke and Boston, and in other places, I would say you've covered a lot of ground already. And what my job is going to be is to take that list of emerging recommendations, smush some of them around, take those additions and things that we left out that people spoke about in the beginning and insert them. Take Ashley's sort of learnings and figure out a way of sequencing them where appropriate. Take the ideas that we just talked about, get them in there. Any learnings from these community meetings that we can access will also be incorporated, so you'll have a sort of the second version of this coming to you in a few days. And if we have 1 more meeting, whatever the last meeting is, the main focus of the last meeting is to go through the recommendations and make sure that either you support them or could live with them. And once you leave that meeting, the only thing that would be allowed would be edits that don't change the actual content of any of the ideas, but may improve the English or, you know, tighten up the meeting. Because once we leave the last meeting, there can't be any deliberations over email. If one of you have a brainstorm in the middle of the night, write to me and say, John, if we can add this, I can't do it because of the open meeting law. It has to be discussed here and has to be approved. So, with that, I want to try an experiment and then ask you to make a decision when you want to know. The big bucket that we haven't talked about really is professional development for the educators. It's really around instruction and how to improve services, and clearly it's come up a lot, but we haven't done a deep dive into that. And one of the problems in that area is it can feel like Mount Everest. Like there could be 19,000 things that teachers have to pay attention to, and that feels overwhelming to everybody. And what I was going to ask you to do is a modified version of some of the conversations we've been having, and it's just a little experiment, but I'm going to ask you to limit yourself to just 2 ideas in your small groups. You're going to have a limited amount of time. If you had a magic wand, what's the one content area that you would recommend that we need to do a deep dive in as a district around adult learning? You only get to pick one topic. All right? What would the topic be from your vantage point? And the vantage point is there are 3 groups. There's a million topics out there, but you only get to pick one. And I'd like to ask that you just spend a few minutes talking to your partners around that, and then once we're done with that, I'm going to listen to those ideas, and then we're going to make a decision about whether or not we need 1 or 2 more meetings. Okay? So just talk to your partners. If you were to make a magic wand and you could get one focused, well-developed, we follow all the rules that we should follow on how professional development should go, with high-quality professional development at its best, what would be the area that we would need to focus on? Would be any of the areas?
Go back and check the original group? Or?
No, just the groups that you're right now.
In fact,
All the curriculums are incomplete, so with 1 to 12.
I don't know if having a school-wide planning on that would be effective. I think that it's not going to be this year, but it just needs to get right. But I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think every teacher needs ownership of the curriculum that they're teaching. If that makes sense. Because I think that's I mean, generally that year or that unit's going to look like, and then the teachers kind of have, within the specifics of that. I think we spend way too much time actually trying. I think that's the one thing that we do put stock into teachers' ideas, and it's the one place that unnecessary. I'd be just as happy with someone saying, okay, you're going to teach this for 5 weeks, this for 5 weeks, you need to cover this topic. These are the essential questions, the vocab necessary. I think if we did a school-wide department-wide level, I think that would very cumbersome. Okay, so that you got curriculum building and maybe curriculum implementation. Okay. I would say
2 minutes.
Right.
The next meeting is social and cultural
I think that is the time.
No, that's just
Okay, I know this is rushed immensely, but I want to see if there's convergence, diversity. All the ideas are going to be accepted and talked about. So who would like to begin? What's your one focus? Helen.
Trauma-centered classrooms.
Trauma-centered classrooms. And just to unpack that a little bit, I
Sort
think
of training teachers to identify, how to respond to these effective trauma.
okay. Good example of focus. Other people might say, well, that might be helpful, but it's not as central as something else. So what's another idea?
Well,
Dave? Sorry?
no, I was talking with them, but they clarified for me how to work with dual language learners.
How to work? Okay.
Or how to teach dual language learners.
Thank you. Dave?
targeted PD based on individual needs and recertification. We have too much of it district determined, PD that is both. not useful.
What was the second part, targeted PD?
Target based on individual need and recertification.
Recertification, thank you. So the idea here being is, one size fits all is the killer part of this thing, and what we really need to do is differentiate, and whether it's differentiation by level, or by grade, or by teacher, or by department, but some form of differentiation. Is that fair?
That's a great way to summarize it.
Okay.
I just want to build on that too. We have so many talented specialists. We have music teachers, and we have artists, and we have librarians, and we have all of these people very talented in their fields. And when it comes to professional development, they're not always meeting together. Some of the opinions that, in fact, all of the opinions that we as union members and teachers are talking about, we take surveys every week and we ask people these questions. The entire staff of the system are allowed to. There's a wonderful survey they can go on, targeted every week to the buckets that you fill out. So we asked them that. And what they said was, many of them said, wow, for the first time I was able to meet with another art teacher or music teacher. If you target that and you give people time to professionally develop, they will develop programs that will bring the community and the schools together just naturally.
So to view meeting time with colleagues as a really high form of professional development, as long as you give people some general target, but to allow people to meet together with colleagues to really have the conversations that lead to the ideas, which then lead to improvement.
Exactly, and in our survey, that was one of the highest things that people mentioned that was working, was meeting in grade level teams, meeting in specialized subject area teams, meeting with their colleagues, having time to do that. That has been given to us. It's never enough, but it has been given to us, and it is.
Okay. Other ideas that we haven't heard? If one of the ideas has already been said, don't feel you have to repeat it. Yeah.
We talked about rigor in the classrooms and raising expectations and having the belief that all students can meet those expectations, just being trained to have the tools and scaffolds needed to get each student there.
So improvement, how to improve the rigor and to really the mindset about addressing this for all kids.
I know you said we didn't need to repeat necessarily, but I thought it was important enough to repeat where Dave said that, like a teacher-driven professional development, like I think a lot of times teachers know what teachers need most, and it's, PD is just being done so the box can get checked for somebody that doesn't even really know what's going on, in the trenches. I think we've all sat through a PD where it's like that was an hour that I'm never getting back.
But shouldn't professional development, now at the stage that we're in now, should be to affect change in the system, to help to improve the system? So any professional development should not just be focused because we have to do so many professional development hours. It should be more around, this is a culture or shift change that we want in our academic environment, or that would be ideal in the academic environment for success for the school system? Or am I thinking about it backwards?
I don't know, I don't think those ideas are mutually exclusive. I think we're saying the same thing in different ways. That would be a change if we could address those things that we're not able to, and I think teachers are aware of that.
You're also in a place where it's hard, and I'm not saying this is the case here, I'm just saying to get buy-in to new initiatives or new thoughts or ideas or changes about the way we're doing things, because there has been so much turnover and so many different ideas coming through that they learn something and then stop it, and then it continues. So we need to get to a place where we can finally just trust one another, and that these decisions are being made for the good, and that they involve teacher involvement to make those decisions. And I mean, the same with teachers when we talked about parents coming into classrooms, we need to all be on the same team. And how we get to a place where we're all on the same team is an important thing. And I think just one point I didn't get to make earlier was when Ashley was talking about like requiring the students here in this building to stay and be a part of something, once you get them excited about something and feeling good about themselves, and even if it's at first a mandate that they have to be a part of a group or something like that, once they're excited about it, the parents will be excited about it too and will want to be here. We give a reward in the middle school. There was this dance that the students earned their way into for making the right decisions and being responsible citizens, and like 480 students or something earned their way into this, and 450, I think, or so got a ride and were able to be here and be a part of it because they were excited about it. So we can find ways, but we have to get the students excited too, and that's it.
That was the point you made earlier. And, you know, what we're seeing here is the spectrum of, on one side, the more we can allow teachers to choose, the way we want students to choose, and to focus on their needs, the higher probability of success. On the other hand, sometimes there's this need based on what's going on in the community for things that maybe I might not on my own sort of think about because I might not necessarily see it. Maybe how to teach kids who grown up in dual language families. So how do we strike a balance that doesn't lose one or the other, the complexity of this? So I think we got a flavor of this, and that's all I wanted to do because there was a bucket we didn't really engage in too much. And now the question for the group is one or two more meetings.
Two. I think we do a deep dive into one thing with the community, into community and family engagement, spent a lot of time, and this one here, we did it in 2 minutes, and we haven't even talked about the third bucket, which is recruitment and retention of staff. Never mind anything else. I think we need one to finalize all those issues, and then we would need another one to kind of pull it all together.
And we haven't talked about curriculum.
We haven't. Oh.
All right, so I think that the group is two. Is that fair? And we know the last one, we really have to go over the draft of those recommendations and make sure we can live with them. So, and we're not going to be able to do everything. We see what happened this year. So if we're fortunate, we'll be able to do 2 deep dives. And it feels like there's a desire to do a much better job with professional development. We just scratched the surface. There's an idea out there for curriculum. There's an idea out there for recruitment and retainment, right? So we're gonna have to pick and choose what the 2 topics are. I don't think we can do, unless we simply give people choices as we've done before, right? And allow groups to pick one or the other so that everybody is at least doing, we get some representation. We could possibly go to 4 topics that way.
I don't think that we could even talk about the dropout, how we can retain students.
Well, I think everything we've talked about is really related to that. Here's my argument, that if we have better communication and relationships with the families, if we better access the resources in the community, if we really have professional development that really supports ongoing learning, if we have an infrastructure around it, you can see where I'm going, then the kids are going to benefit. And if the kids benefit, that means they're going to be more successful and we're going to prevent the dropouts. So I think that's how I've understood these conversations. I don't think we've been ignoring the problems. I think we have different theories of what should be emphasized. So we got a deep dive in professional development and adult learning. I think recruitment and retainment is another one. Curriculum is a third. 4th.
I just have to say this because if I don't, I'll be sorry. But we haven't really talked about the school committee. The first part of this whole district overview and leadership talks about the school committee not doing its job. So we could do all this great work and get another school committee in 6 months, whatever it's going to be.
and have this happen again?
So let me explain why I don't think that may be, it's valuable, but it may not be valuable for this committee. Once the Department of Education took over the school system, the school committee no longer has any authority. And that is not going to change for a minimum of 3 years. So the problem is out there in the future because, you know, this is not going to be a forever situation. But this committee is actually focused on the short term in one regard, that we have to help the receiver develop a turnaround plan that's going to be active in the school, you know, starting in the fall. And so the school committee's, you know, challenges are out there. We could put a recommendation in there, but it's not going to be something that we're going to have to face in the first year, for example. And so I'm a little worried that if we put that in there now, we're not going to be able to focus on the things that actually are going to have to happen starting in September. But that's up to you. I mean, you could, you're not focusing on it. So what do you want to do? What do you want for your fourth topic? Dave?
I think two issues that I think this group can have the most impact on here is ELL programming, because that's a community-based. We need the whole community around this table to try to figure out that, and possibly resources, technological resources. But I think we need to get our head around that piece.
So there's a topic called curriculum. Would that potentially cover ELL programming?
Should fall under that.
Possibly, if we wanted to just roll it all in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking, I mean, we don't have to have 4 topics. It just means that in one round we split, and the other round we all focus. So we don't have to squeeze this in here, you know. But I think professional development, recruitment, and retainment of educators and curriculum are clearly out there. And it feels like maybe curriculum is so big that maybe that's the common way that we all do. All right? So let's go over this. I think we've decided, but you're going to let me know. We're going to meet next Monday.
Yes.
We're going to do several deep dives. We're going to try to expedite the sharing because maybe we can speed that up just a little bit because there's a lot of ideas and Lauren has some ideas. We'll share it next week. And then from that work, plus whatever we got this week, all smushed into those emerging recommendations, you'll get the third version of those recommendations. You get the second one in the middle in a few days, and then after that next meeting, you'll get the third iteration. And then the last meeting, we're just going to look at those recommendations and see if we can move it.
John, did you mention leadership in that list?
So in the recruitment and retention, my sense was the focus on that was on leadership, but you can tell me if that's not the case.
Well,
Because if not,
can
we
we
should make a
combine those two together?
or we could separate them out.
I don't know. Well, I think leadership, whether we feel it as recruitment and also, you know, I don't know, stability.
Recruitment and retention should be on all levels.
Good policies and good procedures should be universal, be it teachers, administrators.
So that would argue to have a separate category for leadership, and we're going to do a split then.
No, they're going to be recruitment and retention of staff and leadership.
Was that what you meant?
Yeah.
Is that what people want to do? My misunderstanding. Thanks, Lauren.
And rolling in
Okay.
everything about leadership.
All right. Can you fill out the process? Give me some feedback, please.
So just logistically, we'll probably meet in here, because I'm not sure that the
We're all set. Good.
with
auditorium.
Oh, you got the
I
sound
like-
for it?
I fixed everything.
Oh, my
You know
goodness.
what, this is a better place anyway.
Do you want to meet here, though? I mean,
I think this is a better place.
I'm sorry?
I'd rather have the meeting in here.
I like it better because there was no microphone, but we could hear it.
I feel the same way.
I'd rather be here.
Can we do that?
So we're in here, so auditorium's all yours, but thank you for fixing that. And we'll do, Are we gonna end at 6:30 or 7? It's up to you guys.
Next week?
Yeah.
I say 6:30.
So
Because
people,
the other one might be long.
okay, so we'll meet from 4 to 6:30 and I'll send out an email about that.